Right, we'll start in the bottom line of Beis, which is going back slightly. We're talking about, in general, Igulim and Yosher. The principal difference is that Igulim, any presence in Igulim, any Madrega in Igulim, is contained within the higher Madrega. And it is constantly substantiated by the higher Madrega. Whereas in Yosher, there is an actual drawing down, an actual descent from level to level. And the lower level has cognizance of its own, on its own, of the Oyer. And as he pointed out, on the one hand, this seems to be an from Metzias Dover, which is Yeshus, which is a lower thing, but there is a mile in it. And the mile is that it has Risrachus. It opens up.
Just tissues.
Back to teachers' kids.
That was a safer.
Huh?
That was a safer.
I understand. There's his Rachmus, and this his Rachmus functions and brings out the richness of the oil that from which it comes, that it represents.
What's the word? It's
It's Rachavus.
Why is being a Metzias bring out his Rachavus?
I want to help us understand the concept of Beis V'Keli that we're talking about. We should actually be able to relate to it. Otherwise, it completely eludes us. We said yesterday that Kelim Ktanim, small vessels, was made small vessels, narrow-minded vessels that do not really contain the oil. Let's explain the word oil, which we have done in the past many times, and it has to be rejuvenated every time. Oil is a derivative of the presence of an etzem. Like we're saying, a human being has a home. What's the home? The home is his domain. It's his presence. Even though he's not there all the time. He's not in every room. There is the oil of his presence. Because his presence is a real presence. Why is it real? Because as we said all the time, Odom Sheni Beis and Odom, the human being, this is the one real presence in the world. Because he represents the godly presence, and therefore he's a real presence. And he has the possibility of ownership and so forth. I don't want to reiterate. Hopefully we already got the sense of this. So oir, to put it very simply, oir is the reflection, is the illumination of the presence. It attests to the presence of an etzem, of a real thing. This is oir. Just a small hop across. If you have kelim for the oir, real kelim rechovim. Kelim rechovim means that you are receiving not only the message of the oir, but the atzmius element of the oir. The fact that this oir really represents an atzmi and a real thing. And we will, I just said I jumped across a little bit just to make the point. This meant kelim. That you recognize the truth of this, not because of any other reason, any other proof, but just because it's true. This means to have kelim. Kelim rechovim. Kelim rechovim means that you're able to.
My candle also presents an atmosphere.
What'd you say?
Oil from a candle on fire is also presenting atmosphere.
No.
Yes.
No, we spoke about this. Oil from the candle is only a functional oil. Doesn't have an etzem oil. I don't want to go there because we did it before. I want to bring this out conclusively to the extent possible. So we said yesterday, for example, we said a child is also able to understand what you explain to the child. Not only is able to understand, but he's able to give it back. What did you learn today? This is what I learned today. But he is able to give it back and is able to understand it only due to the fact that there is his teacher or his father who substantiate that what he's saying is valid. Even though he does understand it. But he doesn't understand the etzem, the essential truth of it. He understands the chitzonis, he understands the structure of it. That doesn't stand on its own. But if it's substantiated, you're saying right, so therefore you're saying right. So I was thinking that perhaps we can use the very simple illustration of this. We always say 1 and 1. We can see it from two angles. We can see it as 2. 1, we can see it as 2. Seeing it as 2 once does not require seichel, does not require klei seichel. Why? Because 2 once is something which you can demonstrate physically. In other words, you do not really understand the inyan. You're not really grasping the principle. You are spitting back the fact that you are shown. The concept of one is a concept that has an oir. And you have to have the keli to be able to sense this oir. That there's such a thing as 2, and that's it, the truth. So here we have a pragmatic, so to speak, a factual demonstration of this. When you say 2 once, this is not a concept that stands on its own. It is true because it has the overall reality supporting it. It is two because it shows itself as two, not because you understand that it's two. There's no oil in the house. This is that it is contained within its source. The whole concept is contained within the source. The source is that you have two. Two once. When you say two, this is already an oil emanating from a different kind of truth, of an essential truth. Like we say, what does two mean? Two means that there is provision for two. Not that there is a fact of two, there is provision for two. And that concept is something which requires an intellectual insight. There you have to have the Kelim Rechovim. The Kelim Rechovim means that in the intellect you sense, yes, there is truth to the phenomenon, to the world phenomenon. And therefore there is such thing as two. Otherwise you would say, no, I can't relate to this. All there is just the external fact. This is the principle of Kelim Rechovim and Kelim Ktanim. Kelim Ktanim, they are not really containing the oil. They are reflecting of what the fact is. Kelim Rechovim, they contribute to it. They receive the essential truth of it. This Kelim Rechovim, this is due to the fact. How is it that we have this kind of seichel? Yes, it is due to the yeshus, to a real presence, a real worldly presence. And the real worldly presence in world means because two ones is not a real presence. Two ones, they don't have any connection to one another. A real presence is when there is a unification and a containment for everything that's contained there. That's a real presence. I don't know if I got this out clearly. A real presence is that which is present because it was intended to be that way. There's an essential intent, an essential reality to it. Something that is there inadvertently is not a real presence. There's no etzem element in this. And this is the difference, it says, between the Nivroim shebe'abosho and Nivroim shebe'yam. Okay. Let's read the last line on page Beis. Beruim shebe'abosho nikroim pikhi. The Beruim and Be'abosho are called pikhi. Pikhi means wise. Well, what's wisdom have to do with it? Because Hisrachvus is through the effect and the presence of Moich. Briefly to explain this statement. If a person has has to sort things out from a multitude of effects. I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to do that, and it gets all frazzled. In Moichin, one is able to reflect and contain all kinds of a full variety of effects, and he has room for everything. And eventually, he puts everything in its proper place. Mitzad midos, mitzad the reaction, he gets frazzled. Moichin is able to contain contradictory situations. His rachbus, a broader perspective, is from Moichin. And this is why the Beruim Shebeyabosha are called Pikhin. Pikhin literally means smart, chachomim, because this is what enables them to have a broader perspective. As we said yesterday, just to remind us, that Chochmah is the beginning of Moichin. Above Chochmah is Rotzen, Anoine, Keser. This is above that. That there is the essential reality. When it comes to Chochmah, it is already in Moichin. What's the effect of Chochmah in Moichin? That in Chochmah, the oyer, the sense that comes from the Rotzen and Anoine, encompasses an entire world. To illustrate the point, some of you know what I'm talking about. Chochmah is corresponding. There is a corresponding element of Chochmah is sight. Now, hearing, you can't trei kol lo mishtam. The Gemara says, two voices, two sounds cannot be heard simultaneously. In sight, you can see an entire panorama, miles and miles across. Mm-hmm. You're not seeing one thing, you're seeing the entire population that is there. As a matter of fact, you see, you don't even, so to speak, pay attention to the unification. You see all the individual elements there, as they are contained within the bigger source. That's Chochmah. That's Seichel. It's an interesting phenomenon which I just now thought of, but it's very, very dramatically illustrates the point. I don't know if you had this experience, I had this, I'm sure you had this experience. You go into an apartment, you want to rent an apartment, you look at the rooms, they look small. You put a few pieces of furniture, all of a sudden, it expanded. Oh, this really is a sizable room. Because this is what Chochmah is, this is what Seichel is. It sees the whole content. On the contrary, it does not see the vacancy. It sees what is there, and that expands the entire view. A panorama is not emptiness. A panorama is everything that is contained therein. This is Yitzhak, this is Al Dei HaMoich. Okay, let's continue. V'zehu ma shelo nimtzo, and this explains the fact that we don't find B'sifrei HaKabbalah in Kabbalah's form, Inyan HaZivuyim, b'bchinas igulim. The principle of zivugim in the igulim level, in the igulim b'china. Kiyim b'bchinas hayesher, only in the yesher realm. Zivugim means that there is a mashpia makabel. There is some kind of an interaction. And by Yigulim it doesn't apply. Hainu lefi, and that is because by Yigulim, that in Yigulim hare atachton hu bimhus u'mitzias dov, hare atachton eino bimhus u'mitzias dov. Because the tachton is not a presence. Therefore it's not called a zivug. It's not a joining of two things. And in fact, the tachton is not a mitzias, and therefore is not able to accept and to receive the oir ha'elin, the higher oir. What is this saying? What this is saying is, as we said before, oir is illustrative of an etzem. Even though it comes in the form of oir, but the real essence of the oir is to reveal and to tell you about the presence of the etzem. When the tachton is not a mitzias, it doesn't have the capacity to receive something that is a mitzias. That's why he's not able to receive the oil early. Ubederech klal, in general, hu bechinas ha'or olavad. The tachton is only ha'ora. Shazehu ma she'ena mitzias. This is in fact what we mean. And this is not a mitzvah. Ha'ora is ein a mitzvah. What is ha'ora? Ha'ora, in fact, we said many times, ha'ora means only the functional element of the oil, not the essential element of the oil. Like in the case of oil, of light, of daylight. The functional element there is that you could see objects despite the darkness. But it doesn't change anything. The essential darkness still remains. And you see the object as mitzias. We said many times, the difference between daytime, and other type, like you'd say a candlelight. The difference is that in daytime, when you say, I could see this object, I could see across the street, is not an appropriate way of describing this light. Why? Because in daytime you cannot but see, because the whole darkness has dissipated. There's light, everything is encompassed in light. When you have a candlelight, a focused light, you say, oh, I'm shining my light on this object. I'm singling it out, I'm able to see it. There it's a whole accomplishment. I'm able to see despite the fact that it's dark. I'm making it visible. But when it's daylight, daytime, the visibility is not a recognizable element. Because there's no such thing as darkness.
What's this illustrating? Sorry, just what was it? What are you illustrating with this?
That it is an atzir, not a ha'ora. When you have a ha'ora is not a mitzvah, it means there is only functional element. functional element of life, not the essential element of life. In Yigulim, the Tachtoin is only a Ha'ora. It is not a Metzius. And that's why it doesn't have the capacity to receive the oil. And now he says clearly these four words. Ve'einu yochel lekabel, and it is not capable to accept gilui oir ho'atzmus. It's gilui oir of the atzmus, of the etzem reality. He can only receive a functional element, but not the oil of the etzem. This is what we say. I hope I have you. 1 and 1, 2 ones, that's not a real truth. That is only a functional element. Because these two are there before. And you were just saying there are two ones. You're not presenting any kind of a fundamental truth. What's meant ha'ora about? And this is why, it seems to be a complete name, this is why you can study Chofetz Chitzonius ad infinitum, endlessly, and become extremely proficient in it, and know it in a very broad way, and remain totally empty in your mind. How many times did you encounter someone who really studied for years and years and years, a PhD candidate? I don't know what I learned. Why did I waste my time on? Because the whole phenomenon of that study is in the Ha'ora, and there's no reality. The whole phenomenon of that study is I'm able to answer a certain question if you ask me that question. But why do I walk away with nothing? Just one more second, one more moment. I have a lawyer here, so I'm going to give an example from the law. You study law and you become proficient in it, whether it is corporate law, criminal law, makes no difference. You're not studying something of an essential truth. You're studying the functional element, the conventional element. You learn Ashtik Gemara, you learn a principle. A godly principle. It's a completely different thing. That which you study has a relevance only under certain circumstances. And if you go to a different country, the circumstances, their laws are completely different, and the structure, the corporate structure is completely different. The whole thing doesn't apply. There is no reality to it. This is it for this morning. It's not good to finish with saying there's no reality. In Torah there is reality. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Call.
So we're learning Torah to always in the way of Yosha.
Yeah.
Today is Aaron's birthday.
Oh, my God.